Hi, I'm Selina, and from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Paul Cornell, who is a writer. He's a speculative fiction writer or science fiction writer, and he's written a number of media tie-ins, and he has written a number of comic books. He's an award-winning writer, and he's written Doctor Who novels and also a number of original novels. And for those readers unfamiliar with your work, Cornell, Cornell, right? That's a great.
I think you're being very British and just calling me up by my surname. Hello, Cornell.
No, Cornell, I said. Like, is he Jerry Cornell? Whoa, that's not right.
Yeah. Could be worse.
For readers unfamiliar with your work, Paul, how would you describe what you write?
I'm a writer of fantasy, of SFF in all its forms, really, and that crosses over television, books, and comics. And I sort of maintain a varied diet of all three.
Okay. And what can readers expect from your newest book?
Well, the one that's coming out next year in 2022, which I don't think many of us thought we'd get to, is a novella for Tor.com, like my Witches of Lichford novellas. It's called Rosebud, and it's my venture into spaceshipy hard SF. It's funny hard SF. It's got a lot of humor in it, but it kind of makes some solid points along the way. It's about a bunch of some post-human, some never human, a bunch of digital people in a tiny spaceship who encounter something in the solar system, and what results from that, which is quite large, quite a lot results from that, thank goodness, in a very small book. So Rosebud I've always wanted to write a book that had a spaceship on the cover. I still haven't, because this hasn't got a spaceship on the cover, as it turns out, but there's a spaceship in it. And I feel that mission's sort of accomplished.
Okay. All right. And what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
Oh, well, there's the powerful metaphor of science fiction and fantasy, the ability to talk about the world now in a very freeing way. If this goes on being the famous sentence that defines SF. And I think that form of satire, which is often a very, very pointed form of satire, is incredibly valuable. And the way that one constructs an SF or fantasy, you cannot separate yourself from the times you live in. It's always about now. And I don't believe the mission is to, make predictions. I believe the mission is to talk about who we are right now. I've always wanted to purely write in a fantastical way, and I've largely had my wish for the last few years. So yes, it's my Witches of Lichford books use magic to talk about the real lives of people in a small Cotswolds market town, and Rosebud similarly uses the digital future as a kind of mirror in which to look at modern society, current society. I wish I could say the word digital. It's getting more and more relevant to be able to say that, and it's very difficult for me. I don't know why. Digital. It's not very good.
Okay. What was the inspiration for, why don't we talk about your Witches of Lichford books, since people can actually get their hands on it right now?
Yeah. There are 5 books in the Lichford series. They're about 3 different women who live in a small Cotswolds market town. in Britain, and they are kind of rural fantasy with lots of comedy and lots of heart as well, lots of oomph, lots of all human life is there, and they're about how the small politics of a small town is all our lives, and those three women are an elderly hedge witch who regards herself as the protector of the town, the atheist owner of a magic shop who believes magic is just science, and the local vicar. And the three of them are kind of thrown together as a kind of sort of cover. They never refer to themselves as a cover, and the vicar takes exception to the word cover. But they do kind of find each other along the way. And there's a lot of tragedy, and there's a lot of real life in there as well. I mean, I live in a small Cotswold market town, and there's loads. You know that thing in the front that says, these people do not resemble any people living or dead, or I have to, cross my fingers behind my back for that one. But they are, I think they're sort of rich. They're like a fruit cake. Mm.
Okay.
And that's not really helpful, is it, for you? Do any of you want a book like a fruit cake? Well, have I got some books for you? Anyway, do go on.
So what was the inspiration for those books?
I've always wanted to write about magic and kind of the detail of magic. And, I do have some grounding in the real stuff, as it were, real being whatever value of real you wish to assign to it. And my wife is a vicar in a small Cotswolds market town. So I kind of threw those ingredients together. And it's just been a wonderful process to write 5 of those across 5 years and, watch the way the world has changed. And I had to write 5 just as the pandemic was upon us, and I had to make the decision as to whether that was happening in the LYCHFORD world. So I decided not to, because it was already plotted out. It was pretty huge. And then I did a little addendum, a short story set in the LYCHFORD universe at Christmas on my blog, where they had the pandemic. So I figure I was just talking about the year before. And I'll leave the chronology to itself.
Okay. Now, what were the steps that you took to bring it from initial inspiration to the finished book?
Well, Lee Harris, the publisher, the editor of Tor.com, asked me for his launch of his novella line if what I wanted to try, and that was the thing I wanted to try. And bless him, he's recommissioned me every year. And I also very much wanted to finish a series, so it's complete. The 5 books form an arc, and that's a great sense of completion for me. I'm very pleased to have done that. And Rosebud is the same publisher, and is me moving to another genre, because I can never settle into one thing for very long. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, horribly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed you do a lot of comic books. You also do some Doctor Who. You said I read that you wrote for the BBC.
I've written 3 of the Doctor Who episodes for the BBC. I've written Doctor Who in just about every medium that's going. I've more than 25 years, from comic strips to books to audio plays to the actual TV show. There may be a medium yet left in which I have not done Doctor Who, perhaps shadow puppets, grand opera, Morris dancing. I don't know. But anyway, I've done it all.
That's great.
And I stopped a while back because I thought, I'll just keep on doing this, otherwise I need to do more original stuff.
And you've also written a number of other comics for DC and Marvel.
Yeah, I've had long runs on DC and Marvel titles. I've got a bunch of creator-owned comics out there right now. Coming this autumn is the collected version of I Walk with Monsters, which is a comic I've had out this year from a publisher called The Vault, which is my it's a very, very personal comic. It's about an abuse survivor and a man who can turn into a monster, finding people who are going to do awful things and doing awful things to them, and they find some redemption, they find some way to healing. And it's a horror comic. It's a heartfelt comic. The art by Sally Cantorino is amazing, and Dervla Kelly, our color artist. And the collected version of that's out this autumn. I'm also in the middle of the Modern Frankenstein, another great run comic right now, which is a twisted horror hospital romance.
Wow. Okay.
It's an underappreciated genre. There's not a lot of that.
Yeah, no, there isn't. I haven't heard very much. Okay, so getting back to well, whichever book you would like to talk about, either the witches, the witches of the tree, or
I'll try and answer for both. I'm aware that talking about a book that's not out until next year is a bit awkward. So throw things at me and I'll respond.
Okay, well, I guess the question that I have is what kind of research went into writing the book?
Rosebud. I try and keep up with current developments in science and space and all that. And what I'm writing an awful lot about, because I tend to dig into a particular furrow, it's kind of what I think an SF writer should do, is a kind of Bill and Ted universe where time travel doesn't produce branches, but there's just one universe, and you can go back and change it, and you will have to live with the results of that. And I'm finding that a great source of drama. And in Rosebud, a kind of a ragtag thrown together crew encounters something that does that, and we see what their personalities, what drama they produce as a result of that. And I'm using that in a couple of other places at the moment for stuff which may or may not be published. But that's kind of the research, if you like. I'm sort of inured in it, so it's hard to see where research starts, really.
Yeah, that's true. So what's your favorite research story that you've ever had?
Ooh, that's... I mean, I've met lots of interesting people along the way in terms of people to talk to about stuff. I know a lot of witches now, which is great. Wow. I mean, I did a bit of Wicca myself when I was a student, and I still love it. I think it's, just a delightful belief system. And so I tend to try and find people who actually do. For my Shadow Police books, I got to know a couple of police officers who were in similar areas, stuff like that. I seek out people who know the thing. Unfortunately, digital beings involved with time travel, harder to know. But at the same time, one of them identifies as or identified before they were rendered into digital form as a trans person. And so I got a friend of mine who is trans to read through the manuscript and, do a sensitivity read. And they still identify as that once they become a digital person. But once one is digitized, the business of identity becomes even more complex.
Very true. Yeah. Wow. All right. So what was the biggest challenge in writing and putting out Rosebud?
I think finding the voice of our lead, who is kind of a rubbish version of me. I very much hesitate to put. Actually, that's not true at all. I often put people like me in my books, but I'm often very critical of them. And that's true in this case to some degree. I think you'll need to read the book to see what that means. It's part of my fear of and distrust of nostalgia. I can fear nostalgia pulling on me like an ebb tide, and it's dangerous. I think it's the waiting room for death. I will have time for that when I decide that there is nothing new to be done. And although I'm a comics collector, I open packages from distant parts and breathe in the smell of old comics and throw it around second-hand shops, but all the time castigating myself for it and distancing myself from it. And this is part of the book. This is sort of what some of the book is about.
Okay. What character did you love or hate the most while writing, and why?
I think one of my digital leads, who is called Strange If True, and who is a ball of hands. He, she, they are a rolling ball of hands, and
Interesting.
and they're kind of the moral center of the book.
Okay. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, I've got 3 more creator-owned comics which haven't been announced yet coming out this year. I've got loads of potential TV stuff in the air, always. I mean, that's something I keep working away at. And maybe a new novel. I'm rewriting a children's novel that didn't quite work into an adult novel that might. And there's all sorts of opportunities always. I'm always sort of juggling, because I do everything. I'm spinning plates on sticks always and trying to work out which thing I should do next.
Okay. Now, now I have some questions for you about being a writer. What's your favorite part of being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
I think it's the life you get as a result of it. The number of interesting people I've gotten to associate with, and I've had dinner with Alan Moore. I've worked for Stan Lee. You kind of you run into people. The great camaraderie of being one of the writing community is tremendous. And when you're up at 3 a.m. at San Diego Comic-Con, one does tend to think, who lives lives like these? And I'm very appreciative that I've had the opportunity to do that. I've been lucky enough to do that. And I think that's my favorite part. Nothing to do with writing. No writer's going to say, I enjoy writing. I enjoy having written. So I wish somebody else could do the writing and just hand it to me and go, there you are, that's your writing.
Okay, so what do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
The writing, which and what overcomes it by just putting one's bottom in the chair. And I always say, just start writing. It'll be rubbish. You'll rewrite it. Okay. You will rewrite it. Is a very good rule, I think. Something that allows one all sorts of freedom and gets one off the hook for starting. And often I will be walking around the house growling at myself, and my wife will say, so is there something you wrote perhaps a page or a chapter ago that is wrong, and your subconscious is getting at you to go back and have a look at that rather than build on it? Because I have a sort of alarm system where I start to hate myself and feel that everything is awful if I'm going to build on something that is a bad foundation that I should not go any further with. And my wife has learned to recognize that faster than I do.
Okay, so what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Oh, I think Stan Lee would have to be it. The combination of immense marketing person that being on panels with him where he's talking about your work and, literally leaping up and gesturing and doing the language and being this huckster. And then discovering that behind the scenes, he's really an editor. I think all of us on that line, which was many years ago, kind of assumed that he was kind of going to be a figurehead. But no, hours-long editorial phone calls from him, in which I think I said 3 words. And real detail, immediately after the panel behind the scenes, he went to me, okay, you've got 7 things to do. You have to do this, 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 and this, and this. And I was like, wow. And, you can absolutely see how he got to where he was between those 2 things. And, behind the scenes, he was delightful at dinner, full of conversation about classic movies. And he'd actually, before that panel in which he was this huge presence, he'd had emergency dental surgery that morning. The energy of the man, I think he was in his 80s at that point. And, here's somebody who started his great success in his late 40s. He was about to quit when he did Fantastic Four #1. And, so he spent the second half of his life basically doing all the things he wished he'd done in the first half of his life and actually doing them. And I really think that's a good game plan. I'm delighted to have met him.
Yeah, he's amazing person. Yeah. So what's been the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
Well, I would say, again, you're going to rewrite, but perhaps that you never stop learning. That, I'm still learning how to write every medium I write in. And being open to that process is actually a way of fending off nostalgia, of still being open to new things. I have to stay in touch because the work demands it. The changes to the work, being in conversation with your genre demands it. I'm reading current comics, watching current TV, and listening to current audiobooks. It's being forced to do that for one's job. Isn't that brilliant?
And each media must be totally different to write for.
It really is. One could say in a TV or movie script, he runs out of the door and slams it behind him. And that is not a good panel description to write in a comic. Can you imagine what the artist would have to draw? And doors are a particular problem in comics. I would advise any novice comic writer to not include doors in their stories.
And you also must have less leeway in certain media than you do in others, and the artists must have a lot more, like in the comic book, than they would in something else.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you're writing prose, it's largely you and an editor, and when it's comics, it's you and a small team, and when it's TV, it's you and a large team. And I like the fact I can move from one to the other. Actually, it's working with great artists like Emma Bichelli, it's delightful to get pages, or Sally Cantorino. It's delightful to get pages of art in your inbox and go, ooh, you can see them adding. The tale is something you're creating between you, and that's a lovely feeling.
Wow. All right. So what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers? I mean, it's probably what you had just said, but
I have a sentence actually, which doesn't touch on that. If you're lucky enough to get critique from somebody who knows what they're talking about, don't argue. It's your job to absorb that critique, to listen, and to change as a result. And you see an editor, when presented with a a pitch document in a pub over a drink, and the editor is incredibly being kind enough to, indulge the novice writer. And the editor goes, okay, so you see what's wrong with this is yada, yada, yada. And the novice writer will go, but you see, no, what I was aiming for is, at that point, the editor could just crumple it up and throw it away because they're not listening. You've got a boxer doesn't learn how to box by avoiding being hit on the nose. It's going to hurt. You're going to have to listen to critique of your work and change it. And I actually make a point still of sending an email back to notes saying, great notes, I'll get straight on it. Often without having read the notes, because I'm not going to let myself argue. I might have tiny pushback to two or three things, but largely speaking, my response is going to be great notes, I'll get on that. It might take me a couple of days to emotionally get there, but I'm not going to show the editor that. I'm not going to show anybody that. I'm going to process that and finally listen and change. I've gone on and on.
That makes sense. So are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that might have helped you and that you might recommend to others?
Well, I'm a member of the Science Fiction Writers of America, which is a tremendous trade organization. One of their groups, Writer Beware, is immensely useful in making sure that writers don't fall for scams and people who want to rip you off. And the SFWA do an awful lot of work in defending the rights of writers as well.
Okay. Next, I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I kind of tell the world about me all the time. I'm a tremendous cricket fan. I gain an awful lot of relaxation from following cricket. And I'm also in later life have discovered that something I never knew what. I never understood what I was doing as a child, and I've done this all my life. I do autistic flapping, where if I am in a particularly daydreamy sort of mood, my limbs will, my arms will start flapping of their own accord, and it looks like I'm having a vague sort of fit. And if anybody comes in the room, I will just go straight back to normal. And I only discovered what that was as a result of my son Thomas being diagnosed as autistic, because then I looked into, what autistic people do, and ironically, he doesn't flap, but that's a genetic load of that I've contributed, and it's viewing myself through an autistic prism. Makes a lot of sense of my life. I don't really identify as that now because, I have never had the chance to be that person through my life. And me and Thomas are quite different in that regard, but I flap.
Interesting. Okay. What questions do you wish interviewers would ask you, and what would the answer be?
It's a really good question. I mean, I like them to ask me about my current work and not about my old work. I think that's true of most writers. I don't think there's anything really that gets that I'm not asked about. I tend to just butt in and give the answers I want to give anyway if the interview isn't going where I want it to go.
Okay. So there's nothing that you want to tell that people haven't already asked you.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's fair. So what is or are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time for the hobbies and things that you love?
Oh my goodness, it's so hard to make time. I mean, with a special needs child and two careers, myself and my wife in the same house, it's very tough. We've recently got to the point where we are having trouble finding time to watch a movie at home. Because our little boy now goes to bed at a reasonable hour for an 8-year-old. And I've been saying recently, maybe we could put that bedtime earlier. Maybe we could shunt it back to 7 p.m. and tell him that's just the way things. No. But it's very busy. And I have actually got some cricket scheduled. Once I'm double vaccinated and as safe as I can be. I'm going to go and see England play some cricket this summer. And I love. I also love the big conventions. I mean, San Diego Comic-Con is such a lovely thing, such an amazing feeling. The idea that we've invaded and conquered a small town. And it's with everyone in the streets wearing a lanyard and every building transformed by fandom. I adore being part of that. And I can't wait to get back to that sometime, hopefully next year.
Hopefully, yeah. Great. Wow. Okay, so what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have with you? Yes. What do you need to have with you when you're writing or editing? Like, do you need coffee or some water or do you need food?
No, I normally have a can of drink on the go of some kind. This is my writing space. I'm in my office with books behind me. I've kind of got a trophy room sort of thing going here. There's art from my comics and awards and all sorts of things. But it's very much my space, and I like to write at my desk. I can write on my tablet, away from my desk, but I very much prefer to be here. And I keep a notepad as well, ready to plunk stuff down. I tend to send emails to myself when ideas suddenly strike, because that seems to be a way to know it'll immediately be on my desktop. There's probably a much more. I mean, I do own several sort of programs that allow one to do that. I'm aware of how Luddite that is, So yes, I like to be in this space. I don't listen to music while I'm writing. That just distracts me. I can have cricket on in the background because I'm used to the rhythm of those noises.
Interesting. So you can have cricket on and you don't watch it while you're writing?
I listen to it. I could have it on a screen or on the radio, and because I'm familiar with the noises, I will look up if there's a particular thunk off the bat, which means that could be out.
Interesting. So you don't like silence when you're writing?
I normally have silence when I'm writing. Honestly, it's just when the cricket's on, I'll have that on. I do know people who love to have music on, and I don't. My own brain can't do that.
Oh, okay. So some writers have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions with them through who either help them or hinder them with their work. And do you have any of those?
I'm afraid I'm horribly allergic, so I really don't. That would be a very bad idea for me.
Oh no! Oh, that's too bad. Okay. Now I just have two more questions for you. One is, where can people find your work besides Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And you can get a lot of Paul's books at Annie's Bookstop of Worcester by calling us at 508-796-5613 or email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. And where else could people find your books?
Well, my website is paulcornell.com, and on Twitter I'm Paul_Cornell. because there was a Paul Cornell without the underscore, and he used it once.
Oh no. So that's where people can get your books?
Or any good bookstore. They're available online from tor.com, and all the comics available in collected editions. There's a good guide to my stuff on the website, so it's not a one-stop shop, but it's a good start.
Oh, great. Okay. So your social media is, you have the website, you're on Twitter, anywhere else?
Instagram, but I can't remember what my name is on Instagram. I'm searchable, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. And thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me along. I really appreciate it.
And hopefully you'll get to New England sometime.
I would love to.
And get to Boscone and Annie's. Okay. Thanks very much. And we will be seeing you.